the blood. I know it was the blood. I know it was the blood for me. One day when I was lost, he died upon the cross, and I know it was the blood for me.
His blood spilled on the streets of Jerusalem for me. Delivered into the hands of the crowd with the kiss of Judas, he calmly responded, "Friend, do what you came to do." So they seized him, clubs and swords in hand, and delivered him to the high priest. Jesus stood trial several times before our people, who, while thirsty for his blood, did not want his blood on their hands, but they still wanted his blood, more than that of the man who already had blood on his hands. So like any leader that caters to his people, Pilate released Barabbas, ultimately nailing Jesus to that cross. Blindfolded, Jesus stood as their spit landed on his face in the very spot that still carried their handprints. "Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?" They mocked. They laughed as his blood sprayed their faces, the hooks in his back shredding his skin as it sailed through the air. The whips landed haphazardly on his back and face. One lash for their lies, two for their petty theft. Each lash forever tattooing their sins into his flesh. Each lash forever tattooing my sins into his flesh. One lash for my lies, two for my petty theft. My stubbornness, hate, idolatry, cold heart were the hooks in his back, shredding his skin as it sailed through the air, mixed with the blood that oozed from the gash in his rib for my murderous ways. Onlookers could bear no more, so they turned away. I turned away, but it was too late. His blood was already spilled.
They whipped him all night long. They whipped him all night long. They whipped him all night long for me. One day when I was lost, he died upon the cross. They whipped him all night long for me.
They demanded Jesus stand, beaten, bloodied, and skin torn apart. No rest for this weary. He proceeded to carry his cross, upon which lay my selfishness and pride. He even picked up my greed. His legs buckled under the weight of my lustful jealousy. But he marched on till he reached Golgotha. Heavy was his head with the crown as the thorns pushed into his flesh. His blood trickled down to meet the spit they spat as he walked by. Wet was his face, yet he still felt the tear he shed as my sins weighed on his heart. Unjustly hanging between two criminals, but thinking of me. "Forgive her, Father, for she knows not what she does," were the words that he uttered, hanging in the spot that was reserved for me. As one of the thieves joined in the taunts of the crowd below, questioning if this was really God's son, why couldn't he save them, save himself like he had saved others? Never stopping to realize that in choosing not to save himself, he was indeed saving others, saving me, saving you.
He hung his head and died. He hung for me.
Darkness filled the land as Jesus cried out in despair. But his father didn't answer. He didn't do the crime, but it was determined that yes, he must do the time. His pleas to have this burden lifted, maybe even shared, fell on deaf ears. "I thirst," he uttered as they took a sponge of sour wine and held it to his bruised and battered lips. Every one of my sins formed a fist around his neck, the heaviness cutting off his oxygen, grasping for air. He realized that no one would appear in his 11th hour to save him. "It is finished," he said with his last breath. And the curtain of the temple tore in two as Jesus gave up his spirit for me, for you.